Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the webinar room. We'll give everyone a couple of seconds here to join us. My name is Mallory. I'm part of our Tech Ops team here at WM Tech. If you're new, we've been going through a series called Automating Your Processes. This is our third episode in the series. So if you missed any of the previous episodes, definitely go back to our website, review some of those. It can be your homework assignment. It'll help you understand how we got to what we're talking about today. While we're going through just some housekeeping things before we get started, you'll see a QR code there on the screen, or you can go to menti.com and enter the code. We're going to be going through a little bit of a presentation. Mostly today is going to be building. But if you go ahead and log into Menti, you can follow along with the presentation on your phone. And additionally, as always, we're going to have a raffle at the end of the presentation. We're going to give you a coffee care package. Whoever makes it to the end will spin a wheel of names and see who the lucky winner is. So if you join Menti now, you can participate in some of the quizzes that are going to be sprinkled throughout the presentation. Whoever is at the top of the leaderboard at the end of this will add their name into the wheel of names again, just to give you some more opportunities to win some coffee. I would take all the opportunities I could get personally, so give you a second to log into that. Also, we'll see where we get if we have any time at the end of our session for some Q&A. We may need to follow up on some of those questions in our emails. So definitely drop your questions in the chat as you have them. If we don't get to them right away, no worries. We'll definitely follow up with you personally. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. That Menti code is going to be at the top of the screen for the presentation too, so you can always jump in. So today, what we're going to be talking about is bringing the pieces together. So in our last episode, we started on creating an automated process in SiteStacker. We started at the beginning of the build session, and we went through different stages of the build. What we started with first, though, just to recap, we started with the planning phase because that's one of the most important things you need to do before you start any project. We talked about how you can list out your process on paper, kind of figure out the different tasks that need to happen, when they need to happen, who does them, really thinking through your process. And then using that list that you created, we talked about how to create a flowchart. And I have the example that we used last time. So over here, I had the different tasks that in my mind I know need to happen in order for an applicant to contact me, to be approved, and then to be hired on as an employee at my pizzeria. I'm going to keep going with the pizza parlor analogy. I finish what I start. So we're going to keep going with that. And then with that list, this is the flowchart that I created. So we talked about how you can identify the different tasks. You can indicate which task comes after which. And if there's any conditional things that trigger different tasks, you note that in your triggers. So this is the format that we ended up with. And then besides that, we talked about building in stages. So like I said, we started actually creating the workflow. And we made it through many of these stages. It shows here the different pieces of SiteStacker that we used in order to pull those pieces together. So it's not just Motion 2. We had to create user groups and users. And then we visit CRM a lot to make fields and record types. So we made it through many of these stages. Working in stages helps keep you automating efficiently and keeping you from a lot of back and forth work. If we end up at the end of our workflow and we decide, hey, I want to make some updates, I think it actually would be really great to have this extra task here. You can always go back, update your flow chart, and then jump back into your workflow and build from there. Another benefit to a workflow, just having this chart it out like this is, in our example, it's been a couple of weeks since we met. Now I can just go back to this flow chart and know exactly what I need to build from here. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and pick up where we left off last time. Today we're focusing on putting the pieces together. So we built tasks, we built roles, like we said. Now we're going to be building form fields to put on our forms. We're going to look at front-end site pages to really pull all of those different aspects of our process together. So if we jump back into our installation over here, the first thing I'm going to do is go to CRM. If I open up this component, I'm going to go to the entities that we started creating. So on the left-hand side here, we're going to go to the configuration tab. And then up here, we have many different tabs that we can use. We're going to be using a few of these, like relationships, record types, and entities. But entities is the one that we're concerned with right now. So I'll open that up. Here we talked about the different entity groups that you can have. So each one of these folders represents an entity group. And at the bottom of the list here, I created a new entity group for our workflow. If I open that up, we've got the different entities that we created last time. So they're sitting here ready to be used. If I jump out of this real quick and go to our flow, I'll open up Motion 2, which is where we built our workflow. And I have our pizza parlor workflow open. This is what we built last time with all of the different landmarks and the different tasks. If I open up each of these tasks, you'll see the different triggers that are connecting them together. And then on the right-hand side, we made a couple of roles. So we have applicant, and then we have admin. So what we have here are the different forms that the applicant's going to fill out, the approval decision points that the admin is going to put their answer in. But if I right-click and choose Manage Form Fields, I can open up the form and see that it's empty. So we need to put form questions here for the applicant to answer. And that's where CRM is going to come in handy. So if we jump back to that tab that we already had open, we come down to our entity groups and our entities. We're going to start building the actual questions that we want to appear on our forms. Before we start building those, though, just a little bit of a comment on entities. When you are planning out the entities that you're going to use in your workflow, it takes some strategic thinking. In this case, and in all entity groups, really, they're going to end up as tabs on a CRM record. So this is just a minor detail, but see this pizza parlor application form, that'll show up as a tab on the applicant CRM record. Each of these entities will show up as a different section in that tab. And then each question within these entities are going to show up in that tab. Let's see here. So the way that I created my entity group and entities is just organized by workflow. Depending on your installation, the way that you organize your groups and your entities is going to be different, especially if you already have workflows that are live, they're being used. There might be some crossover between which questions you want to ask. So if ever you have any questions about best practices with your entity planning, definitely reach out to my team. We'd be more than happy to help you plan the best course of action for your installation. Here, I just have all of my entities organized by task. So that'll make it easy for me to see which questions are asked on which form. Before I start creating some fields in here too, I also want to check and see if I need anything to be a multi. So we call some entities multi-entities. These are just special entities that allow you to save that answer multiple times on a CRM record. So for example, say we have an applicant going through the application process and they fill out the application form. Single entities, which are what we default to, those will only be saved once on the CRM record. So if they answer a second time, the answers on their CRM record will be overwritten and updated with the newest answer. We want to keep it that way as much as we can, but there's some instances where maybe you need an entire block of questions to be repeatable. For example, I'm looking at my entities and I have this task here, previous work experience. Typically in a real world example, I might have worked at maybe 10 different places, right? And I need to list each of those places in order to have a full application. So instead of creating 10 different entities here, I'm going to make this repeatable. And those 10 different answers that I put in my application forms will all be saved to my CRM record. Again, using multi-entities, it takes strategic thinking. It can be a problem later down the road if you decide, hey, I have a single entity, I actually want it to be a multi-entity, or the opposite, I have a multi, I want to make it single. Once your workflow is established, and especially once it's live and being used, it gets really difficult to switch between the two types of entities. And even in the fields themselves, right? There's many different entity fields that we have the ability to use. But if you switch between incompatible types, you run the risk of losing some historic data that's already saved in your CRM. So really planning it out beforehand is helpful. Again, if you have any questions, my team would be happy to give you some tips. And then also, as you're planning out the fields and the questions that you want to ask your applicant, it's good to consider what might be PII, or I think that's personally identifiable information. So that could be something like a driver's license, social security numbers. There's pieces of info that we can't store in our site stacker databases. So if you want to learn more about our policies surrounding PII, follow up. We will get you that information. But I've already thought through the questions I need. What I am going to do is I'm going to make previous work experience a multi-entity. So I'm going to double click here. And you can see on the right-hand side whether or not this entity is multi. So I'm going to consider this one repeatable and hit save and close. So now everything is single and only this one thing is multi. And as a rule of thumb, the reason that I said, okay, this is okay to switch to a multi-entity is because the series of questions I want to ask will be repeated on a single form. So we're going to create it like that. And then I'm just going to jump into each one of these entities and start building out the questions that I need. First, I'm going to go back to my flow here. And with my written process, I can kind of take a look and see, okay, I definitely need my applicant to let me know how old they are, if they're able to work in the US. And then we talked ad nauseum last time that favorite pizza topping is a very important question to answer. Later on, we might need start date, end date, job description for the previous work that they've done, reason for leaving. So these are all the pieces I'm going to go ahead and build now. And jump back into my entities. I'm going to start with application form. So I right click on the entity and choose manage fields. We don't have any fields in it yet, so I'm just going to come to the top here and choose add. My first question is going to be about their age. I think I'm going to say 18 plus years question mark. And I'm going to make this a yes, no question. So here in the type section, if I drop this down, we'll see all the different types of fields that we can configure. So it's pulling in all of the data groups that we have in our system right now. We have some standard field types. We have, yep, that's pretty much it. Data groups and standard field types. So I'm going to start typing yes, no. Here you can see we have yes, no data group, and then a yes, no standard field type. As our best practice, we use yes, no data groups. Some standard field types we don't use as often anymore. So I'm just going to choose this data group. This is one that's typically built in your installation already for you. So that's already available to us. I'm just going to choose that. And because it's a data group, that means there's multiple choices in this one field type, right? So if I scroll down here, there's going to be a couple of configurations I need to make. It's going to have me choose whether it's going to present as a combo box, which is just a drop down, or if it's going to present as a radio group. So just different radio buttons you can click. I'm going to choose a combo box. That's personal preference. And then the rest of this can be updated on the form itself. So I'm going to hit save and close. So here we have our first field. I'm just going to add a few more. Let's call this one able to work in the US. I'm going to make this a yes, no also. Save and close. Oh, I tried to save and close, but I have to choose whether it's going to be a combo box or a radio group. So I'm going to say combo box. And let's do preferred start date. I tried to hit back, but my back key is a little sticky. So I'm going to do a date type this time. So I'm just going to start typing date. And the date field is really nice. When that's on your form, that lets you drop down a little calendar pop-up, and you can choose a date, or you can type in a specific date. There's nothing else that we have to configure here, so I'm just going to hit save and close. And then I think the last one for the application form is going to be the pizza topping question. So this is a result from our last webinar. Let's see, meat lovers, everyone loved that one the most. Pineapple was second. And then other, I guess that's like veggie or something. And then somebody chose anchovy, so that's a little concerning, but we will put it in the data group list anyways. So I'm going to come back to Site Stacker. I'm going to close my entity for now. So in order to create a data group, we're going to jump out of CRM and out of Motion 2. We're going to go to a different component called data groups. So I'm just going to open that up. And here's all the data groups we were just looking at when we were choosing from the list of field types. We are going to make a new custom data group. So I'm going to choose add, give it a name, pizza toppings, save and close. And then this orders alphabetically, so I'm actually just going to search for it in the bar here. Pizza. Okay. There we go. So looking at our pizza toppings data group, we don't have any columns or anything on the right side. If I look at a different one, we can see we've got different columns, different setups. So like school progress, here's the list of choices, here's the order that it should appear in the dropdown. So I'm going to copy that and make the same setup here in the data group. And this is kind of the nitty gritty of configurations, but they're helpful. So I'm going to right click on our data group and choose manage fields. And this is where we're going to create the columns. So I'm going to create my first column. It's going to be a text type, and I'm going to call it label. A couple other pieces we can check. We're going to say that this is searchable and that it is a display field. And then that's all we need to do for that. So we're going to hit save and close. And then we're going to need one more column. I'm going to choose add. I'm going to say text again. And then this time I'm going to call it order and hit save and close. And of course, there's a lot of flexibility in how you set this up, but this is our standard practice. So we have a column for the label. That's going to be all the different choices that we have in our data group. And then we have the order. That's going to be the order that it appears in the list. And then when we put this question on the front end form, we can actually change how the questions are sorted. So we can sort them by the labels, alphabetically, or by the order, ascending, descending. So I'm going to start adding the choices I want. I'm going to put meat lovers at the top of the list. Pineapple as number 2. Other as number 3. And then anchovy. Is that how you spell anchovy? I'm going to go with it. I'm going to say number 4. Save and close. So now we have our options here. I can go ahead and close out data groups. I'm going to go back to CRM, back into our application form where we're building the fields, add a new field. And now if I look up pizza toppings, that's an option that I can choose from. So I'm going to choose pizza toppings. I'm going to give it the same, well, I'm going to say, because the question I'm asking is this your favorite pizza topping? Question mark. Going to call it a combo box and save and close. Okay. Close that. My next one, previous work experience. Go ahead and just add a couple more fields so we can fill out these forms. I'm going to say job description. I'm going to use a text area for this one. So if I type text in the type fields here, we have a couple of different options. Text here is usually used just when you have a one-sentence answer that you're expecting from the applicant or the user. Text area is if you have maybe a couple of sentences. And then text box, we actually use for blocks of text throughout the form itself. So that's not an answer field. That's where we're displaying information. So for this one, I'm going to choose text area. Save and close. Yes, no. I'm going to say, do you still work here? Question mark. Combo box, save and close. If they don't work there anymore, I'm going to say, what is your reason for leaving? And this time, instead of a text area, I'm going to use something called a tiny MCE. So I'll click that. And we use tiny MCEs when we're expecting or hoping for multiple blocks of text from the user. So maybe they have a couple of paragraphs for the reason why they left. Maybe they want to use bullet points to list out every single reason. What this lets them do is format their answer, and then that formatting is going to be saved on the CRM record. So I'm going to hit save and close. So that's looking good. Just a couple more work credentials. One more yes, no. Do you have a driver's license? And no, that's not right. There we go. License. Combo box. Close. Okay. So we've made it to the last entity that we created. We called it approvals. If I come in here, manage fields, what we're using this entity for is instead of just one task, we're kind of looking at the whole flow. We see, okay, we have this initial approval. So this is when the admin says, yeah, they're good to keep going in the application process. And then we have this final approval, which is the admin saying, okay, they're approved and they are good to go to be an employee here at the pizzeria. So instead of creating an entity for each one of these tasks, I'm just going to lump them together in a general approvals entity. So I'm going to make one for that initial task, initial approval. Yes, no. And that way we can indicate in the flow whether or not the applicant can move forward. And then I'm going to make one for that final task. It's also going to be yes, no. It's going to be final approval. Render combo box, save and close. And then this is a detail that's not necessary, but it's kind of a helpful piece when it comes to those decision points in your workflow. So I'm going to say final approval date. So on that final approval task, I'm going to have the admin answer, yes, I approve this person, and this is the day that I'm saying I approved them. And again, it's not really necessary. A timestamp is saved whenever a form is submitted, but what it's doing is it kind of gives the admin a second to think about the decision that they're making. So it's a little bit of a psychology piece, just to really have someone confirm, yes, they are approved to move forward. Just because it's easy to hit the submit button and not think about it again. So now we've got all of our fields. What we're going to do next is actually jump into Motion and bring these fields into the forms themselves. So I think I can close this for now. Let's jump back into Motion. And we have our workflow open. So we just completed another stage. We're going to move on to the next stage and just get all of the fields into our tasks. And then we can go back and add some details. So when I double click on a task, this brings me to this window that we looked at last time. You can put in some description text if you wanted. There's some configurations that we talked through. Now what I'm going to do is right click on the task and choose Manage Form Fields. And I'm going to start from top down. So I'm going to start the application form. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to right click and choose Add a Person Field Set. So this is always going to be the first thing that we add to a form. What this lets me do, it lets me choose from our primary roles. And any questions that I ask after this are going to be saved to that primary roles record. So I'm going to choose applicant. I'm going to hit save and close. So now we have applicant. If I right click on that, this is where we can start bringing in some questions. The first thing I need to do before I pull in the answers that we just made, I'm going to add a person field. So you see you've got a couple options. You can add standard fields or person fields to the field set. I'm going to choose person field. Because this is the first task that is submitted, in order to save any information and in order to submit a new form, we need a person ID. So it's possible that this person doesn't have a CRM record yet. What we need to do here is actually create a CRM record first, and then have all of the fields saved to that CRM record. So the way that we create a CRM record is we have the applicant answer a couple of specific questions. We need their first name. And then we have some options here. We're going to require this field, save and close, add another person field. We need their last name and require it. And then the last piece, we need their email. So I'm going to jump over and find primary email. And if we look at this list, there's a few different things that we can ask about the applicant. But the three that we need just to create that record are first name, last name, and email. I'm going to make all of these required. Save and close. On the right-hand side, you can see if they're required or if they're hidden. So now that we have that piece established, now we can add our entity field set. So I'm going to right-click on the role again and come down to this option here, Add Entity Field Set. And this is where we can find the entity group that we made and all of the entities inside of it. So I'm going to find pizza. There we go. Pizza parlor application, application form. So I'm going to choose that, hit save and close. And you can see the entity field set by this little box. Now I can right click on that field set, add entity field, and that gives me access to all of the questions that we just made. So I'm going to choose the first one, 18 plus years. And here you can change the label. The label is what's front facing on the form. The name is just what we see on the back end, so we can change that to whatever we need for our organization's sake. I'm going to say, yes, this is required. And then I'm going to choose again that I want it to be a combo box. And then save and close. And I'm just going to repeat that for each one of these that we created. Are you able to work in the US? Combo box. preferred start date, and then last but certainly not least, favorite pizza topping is required. Oop, and it is a radio box, combo box. Save and close. Alrighty. So our application form is all set. I'm going to go ahead and repeat this process with each one of these forms. In the meantime, while I do that, I'm going to try to do something for you guys. I'm going to skip to the next thing here. All right, so I'm going to let you go ahead and complete a couple of quizzes while I build out the rest of these forms. So get your answers in and we'll get your name on the list for coffee. We'll give you a couple seconds here. 3, 2, 1, enter. All correct answers get max points. All right, which 3 stages do you build in first? You do. Nice, so we had a little bit of an even split here. Workflows, landmarks, and tasks. That sounds logical, right? But really, before we can add tasks to a workflow, we need to be able to have roles to assign those tasks to. So the real first 3 are workflows, user groups, and then roles. Looking good. Look at all those points you guys got. All right, next question. So we've got 14 players ready. 3, 2, 1. What is a multi-entity? You can explain it the way that you understood it. Give you a few more seconds for that one. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Woo! Got yours in last second. Well, it shows that it's all wrong, but that's not correct. So the correct answer is multi-entities are special fields that can be saved multiple times on a person's CRM record. We got some good answers over here. Repeatable fields, more than one record. Awesome. There is no limit. True. All right, good job, guys. Ryan's keeping track of the leaderboard. All right. Okay, so next piece, we've got our form fields on our forms. Now that we actually have fields to choose from, we can go back to these triggers that we made last time and configure some conditional logic with these. Just to review, if we go back to our flow, we said that pizza parlor, straightforward, as soon as they submit their application form, they're going to be reviewed by the admin. But after that, what's going to happen is if they're approved to move forward, depending on one of the questions that they answered here, their favorite pizza topping, they're going to be assigned different tasks in the application piece. So if they chose meat lovers, fantastic. They only need to do one thing in order to get to the final approval. If they chose anything but meat lovers, they're going to need work credentials and their previous work experience. If they chose anchovies, which is a big red flag, they're going to need all of these. They're going to need background check, previous work, work credentials. So the plan is to go into our triggers and make that happen. We're going to kind of figure that out together. So if I jump into webinars, so this is a good point here. What we're doing in the pizza parlor application form is asking that question, but where we're determining the next tasks is actually in the initial approval. So if I come to initial approval, manage form fields, What I'm going to need to do is pull in the applicant's answer into the admin's form, and that's what's going to trigger the next tasks. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to right-click, choose person field set. I'm in the admin's task, but I'm going to choose the applicant role and save and close. I'm going to do what we did before and find our entity. And that question was asked on the application form. So I'm going to find the application form entity, save and close, add entity, favorite pizza topping. So thinking through this, I want this question to be pulled into the admin's task so I can trigger new tasks based off of it, but I don't want the admin to actually see the applicant's answer. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to relabel this and call this one hidden, and I'm going to hide it. So it's being pulled into the applicant's or into the admin's form, but the admin isn't going to see it. It's just there so that it can affect the next steps of the process. Save and close. So it's technically not accessible by the admin. I'm also going to add the approval entity that we created. So let's come on down. All right, approvals. And then this is going to be the initial approval. So add entity field, initial approval. Combo box, save and close. So one thing I need to make sure of is because I want that answer that the applicant has on their CRM record to be pulled into this task, I need to open the task up and make sure that this CRM data box is checked. So that's what allows this task to look at an existing record. Hit save and close. Perfect. So now we're going to say that we have all the information we need. We're going to jump into each one of these triggers that we created before and do some conditional logic. So assign background check. Open this up. Before we looked at the source, could be on task completion or task assignment. We looked at the action that it's going to do. It's going to assign the background check task. But now we can look at this section, trigger conditions. We don't have any conditions configured yet, so I'm going to add a new one. And we can choose a type. From this list, I'm looking for field value match. When I choose that and click field, it shows me the fields that I can use in this condition. So we have our hidden field here, favorite pizza topping. Choose that. Choose the condition rule we need. In this case, we want to use selection is exactly. So if the selection is exactly anchovy, we want to trigger the background check. So save and close that. Save and close. Our trigger updated, and we see this little button here. If I click that, it gives me a quick overview of what the conditional logic is. So that kind of helps me keep track of my triggers, what's doing what. I'm going to jump into this third one. Since it needs to have a different outcome, we have a different trigger. So I'm going to do condition, and this one is triggering previous work experience. So what did I say here? Previous work experience. Maybe we don't need a trigger on that. I'm going to try not putting a trigger on that because really I want all applicants to do that. Instead, I'm going to jump to work credentials because according to my flowchart, I really only want work credentials to be assigned to anyone that didn't choose meat lovers. So let's come back here. Trigger condition, type, field value match, find the hidden field. The condition rule is going to be different this time. So let's see. Well, I'm going to choose exactly, actually. Choose meat lovers. So it's saying if they chose meat lovers, assign work credentials, which is the opposite of what we want. So I can actually choose this little negate button. So if they chose anything but meat lovers, assign work credentials. Save and close. Save and close. Okay, So we've got those conditional pieces triggering. Another thing we can look at with conditional logic is within the forms themselves. So let's say we have previous work experience, right click, manage fields, set this up real quick for the applicant. Some of the questions that we're asking here include, do you still work here? If you don't, why did you leave? Things like that. So let me go ahead and pull that up real quick. Previous work experience. This is the one that's going to be repeatable as well. So we said that previous work experience is going to be a multi-entity. So on this, I'm going to choose is multi. And you can actually establish how many work experience histories they can put on this form. I'm going to leave it the way it is for now, hit save and close. And then from here, add a couple of questions. So job description. Do you still work here? Combo box. And then the last one, reason for leaving. Save and close, save and close. So as it stands, we can ask all of these questions on the front end. That's fine if they say, are you still working here? And they say, yes, I am. This still shows. It still asks them, okay, well, why did you leave? They can put NA if they want, but that's not the best user experience. So in order to just kind of refine the experience here, what I can do instead is I can jump into reason for leaving. I'm going to hide it. So on loading this task, they're not going to see that. Instead, I'm going to come to this decision point here. Do you still work here? Jump into that. And now I can add a field trigger. So if I add a field trigger, it's looking at the answer for this question. If they answer, no, I don't still work here, I'm going to show reason for leaving. And I could either show or hide. In this case, it works best to show that field. Hit save and close, save and close. So now they can run through this and have a more seamless experience. Job description, yes, I still work here, the end. So that's a couple of different places we can use conditional logic. Close that out. Let's see here. Cool. So the next piece is we actually have a functioning workflow, right? We can start from the beginning of this workflow and make it all the way to the end. But something that we can do in between, there's a lot of different triggers that we can use. So this one, we definitely have the flow moving. So this task triggers this task, which triggers these. In order to kind of keep in mind, though, not just what's happening during the flow, but what can happen later on with reporting or in your dashboard experience. There's different things that we can do here that can make your user experience better, the applicant's user experience better, and just your management as an admin. So we always want to keep in mind the data collection, connection, and visualization. We've said that a lot on this webinar, but we just want to keep talking about that, because as I'm building, I can keep in mind, like, hey, what if down the road I want to see a list of everyone that answered pineapple on their pizza, right? Or a more realistic example, maybe, which missionaries want to go to Ghana, which missionaries want to go to Florida, because we need missionaries for sure. So those are some things that we can do. We can use triggers to assign relationships, assign record types, update the status of the flow itself. So we're going to add some new triggers just to explore the possibilities and to kind of keep you thinking of what you can do in your process. So you're always keeping your use case in mind as we're looking through these examples. We are going to start off by going to the pizza parlor application form. Let's go ahead and right click. We're going to choose add trigger. When this task is completed, Let's send an email to the admin to let them know that, hey, there's a new form waiting to be reviewed. We don't need a trigger or a condition, sorry. I'm going to say action, and then we have all these that we can choose from. I'm going to do send notification, email. I'm going to send to a role within the workflow, and then I can choose which role I want that to be sent to. So I want it to be sent to the admin. Give it a subject. A new form was submitted. Please go to your dashboard to review it. So we can do a simple message like that. I can also link straight to the dashboard. So if I come over here in the variable tree, we have this variable here called sites. If I drop this down, we have the different channels. And this does depend on installation, but by default, this 3 here represents your dashboard. So if I come in and I choose primary domain, I'm going to use this as my link. So I'm going to call this dashboard, highlight this, link, new window, insert. So then whenever an application form submitted, the admin has a quick way to jump to their dashboard and get to reviewing it. So I'm going to hit save and close there. And then upon approval, there's a few things we can do that are helpful. I can say add trigger on completion if this applicant is approved to move forward. So I am making a new condition. I say initial approval. If it's exactly yes, they're approved, then I'm going to send an email to the applicant letting them know you've been approved. Hi, you've been approved to finish. Whoa, I can't spell. The application process. And then here we could do another link to the dashboard. This is where something called a pre-login token can come in handy. We have some new documentation regarding pre-login tokens. So if you're interested, drop that in the chat and we'll follow up with you to get you researching into that. So pre-login tokens, if we send that in an email to the applicant, it's going to let them click on that and get halfway into their dashboard, essentially. It's going to set them up with an email, and then they'll set up their password, and that's what's going to give them access to your dashboard. They can have a task list there, maybe a resource library, depending on what you set up for them. And that's where they're going to complete the rest of the tasks in the flow. So I'm just going to call this set up your dashboard. And we'll pretend that this is a pre-login token link. So this is going to be sent on approval. A couple other things. Let's say when this starts, so when an application form is submitted, I want to update the status of this engagement. So maybe later on the road, I can be in my dashboard and say, hey, I want to see all of the engagements that are currently active. Or you can filter it again and say, I want to see engagements that are denied or people that just dropped off. So I can say add trigger. On task completion, we're going to choose a new trigger type. I'm going to say change engagement status. And last time we set up these statuses, they can be whatever you want, but we chose in progress, denied, and complete. So as soon as the application form is submitted, I'm going to say that this is in progress. And then maybe here at the end, final approval, I'm going to say change engagement status to complete. Save and close. Just a couple more things that we can do here. Maybe we want to add special record types to the applicant. For example, when they start this process, I want to call them an applicant versus an employee, right? Maybe at the end, when they're approved, we can say, yes, they're an employee. We'll take away the applicant record type. Or we might indicate, okay, which answer did they give to that special question? Which is your favorite pizza topping? So let's come out of motion 2 for a second. Going to jump into CRM, go to configuration. Instead of entities, which is where we've been spending a lot of our time, we're going to go to record types. Here we can add a new record type and call it maybe anchovy and hit person type so that that can be applied to person record types. Save and close. And then maybe another one, meat lovers. Let's see. I don't know where those ended up. Here we go. Pizza meat lovers. Gonna retitle this one. Pizza, keep it consistent, save and close. All right, so we've got those set up. Now they're available to use in motion. So we'll come back here. On the application form, I'm gonna make a couple new triggers. On task completion, field value match, favorite pizza topping. If they say anchovy, save and close, we're going to choose a new CRM record type. So it's adding, we're saying that we want it to apply to the role, and then it lets us choose which role we want this to be applied to. So it's going to apply to the applicant. And then here I can scroll down and find my pizza record types. Anchovy. Save and close. Make another one quick for meat lovers. CRM record type. Applicant. Meat lovers. Oh. If they choose meat lovers as their answer. Save and close. So now we can use these two record types. We know that those are going to be applied to the applicant depending on what they answer. So we can use those to actually shape the experience that the applicant has on the front end. We can send them down totally different paths depending on the record type that they have. And we'll take a look at how maybe we can set up some of that on the front end. Real quick, let's do pop quiz. All right, so we've got another question for you guys. Go ahead and jump in, and if you get it right, we'll add you again to the list so you can get some coffee. Give you a couple seconds here. We got 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, where do you create record types? Got Spark component, Motion 2, CRM. There's a lot of different places you can be in Site Planner, in Site Stacker, to create these pieces for your flow. Nice. CRM component is correct. I think we've got one more here. Let's see if the leaderboard changed. Oh, we've got some coming up. Nice. All right, let's do one more. Last chance. 3, 2, 1. How do you publish a form to your site? So this is a little tricky. We haven't looked at it yet. So we can do it with the task sequence module by publishing a hyperlink to the form, or with data viewer module. So this one will get you 2 points. You need to see how well you can guess. Hey, we've got some experienced people here. It is with the task sequence module. So we'll take a look at that real quick. All right, good job, guys. So let's jump back into SiteStacker. So we've built out the flow. The next thing we need to do is connect our forms to the front end site, so the applicant actually has somewhere that they can fill the form out. So I'm going to jump out of Motion 2. And again, just an example of all the different things we can use to automate your process. We're going to go to Site Planner. So this, we're going to do a little bit of Site Planner training here. If you haven't been in Site Planner before, there's a lot of pieces here, and we have more resources that you can visit to learn more about how to build pages and content. If you would like to see a webinar hosted by our very own Jaden to walk you through Site Planner, let us know in the chat. I think that'd be pretty fun. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come to our front end site channel here, drop this open, and you'll see a whole lot of test pages. I'm going to add a new page. I'm going to title it Pizza Application Form. Save and close. All right, so we've got our page. The next thing we need to do is actually get the form into the page. So I'm going to come over to this side, Content Explorer, navigate to all the content that's on the front end site. And I'm going to go to our modules folder right here. So there's a lot of different types of modules that we can create. The one that we're going to look for, like we just showed in the quiz, is the task sequence module. So I'm going to choose Add Item. And then here, if I drop this list down, you'll see all the different types of modules we can create. I'm just going to start typing in the title of mine. So it's task sequence right here. Choose that and rename the module. I'm going to say Pizza Application Form. And when I hit save, it's going to load more configurations that I can use. So here it's going to make me choose a workflow. So we'll find our pizza workflow somewhere. There we go, at the very bottom. Pizza parlor application. We can find the task that we need. So I know it's in the applicant landmark. In that landmark, it's the application form. So choose that. I'm going to force new. So every time an applicant submits this, it's going to create a new engagement. I'm going to auto log out also, just in case an applicant is already logged into your site when they're filling this out. We want to go ahead and make sure that we're starting from fresh. So I'm going to hit save and close. I've got to find it. There we go. Task sequence, pizza application form. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this into our page. Choose body, save and close. So I don't have it in a wrapper. I'm going to go ahead and grab one of those just so you can see it. So I come down here to basic wrapper, bring this into the page, and this is just going to let us choose some formatting options. I can do some padding on the top and bottom, things like that. So I'll say centered 1000, and that just helps the form look nice on the front end. Padding top, padding bottom, padding times 2, save and close. And then I can drag a task sequence into our basic wrapper. Right click and preview. And here we go. I think this is a formatting thing. I kind of like the black fields though. That's interesting. So we've got the name of our form. We've got our task description, first name, last name, email, and then all of the questions that we set up in entities. And you can choose a date and your favorite pizza topping. Now a little submit button. So that's what it looks like on the front end. Jump back over here. Alrighty. So really the possibilities are endless as far as what we can do for our workflow and what we can do in connecting the different data points to the front end, to the dashboard. What we're going to do in our next webinar is explore the dashboard experience and see how we can bring all of those data points that we've been collecting together into a cohesive experience for you and your team. So if you have any last questions, be sure to drop those in the chat and we'll follow up with you on those. Next, we're going to go ahead and spin the wheel of names. So I'm going to come down here. Okay, so we're getting the wheel of names set up. I want to get Beyonce in on this list a couple more times since you won. Good job, but I need to know your real name. So can you please drop that in the chat when you get a second? I think when you log in to do quizzes, it assigns you names, which is fun, but I'm very curious. Oh, perfect. Okay, so let me get you in here. I'm going to put you in a few times so you have some chances here. And then I'm going to reshare my screen. There we go. All right, let's spin this wheel. Ooh. Justin, you are the winner today. Go ahead and drop your contact info in the chat and we'll be sure to follow up with you and get you your Coffee Co. Care package. So awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for hanging out today. Hope this was informative and helpful. We will see you in our next webinar for the next piece of automating your process. Have a great Thursday.